Gonna give it a few minutes. We've got everyone joining. Hello, Happy New Year. Very excited to kick off today, our first Eye on ESI for the year.
Yay.
Yay. More excitement, Mike. I like the jazz hands. Jared. There we go. Jazz hands. All right.
I was just giving you more fingers.
I like it. I like it. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I know I said it already, but just in case anyone missed it, we're super excited to kick off the year with Eye on ESI. Last year was extremely successful. We started off the year once a quarter and have moved into once a month just because of so much interest. Everyone's been asking and we see the success and we want to have more conversations. This, before I introduce the other two gentlemen with me here today, I want to just say this is an open forum. We want you to share your thoughts, share your opinions, share your comments, ask questions. This is not talking heads. We do not want to be talking heads at you. We'll share our expertise. I am always open and willing to learn, so we want everyone to be interactive, and so please share. I am joined today by Jared Coseglia, the founder and CEO of True Staffing Partners, and of course, Michael Quartararo, president of ACEDS. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, just in case we are covering the globe. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, Maribel. Thanks for having me as always, everyone. Thanks for coming.
I'm okay. A little tired.
Well, that's okay, Mike. We'll let you be a little tired. It's always okay to be a little tired. So I want to kick us off. Every month we go over some stats that the True Staffing team puts together for us. So Jared, you want to just share those with us and give us some updates on what's good, what's bad in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive right in. So welcome everybody to the new year. Happy New Year. It's the beginning of Q1. There have been a lot of real deductions made from the year that has passed. We're going to share those with you today. So first off, we always talk about speed of hire. As you know, if you know me well, I think the speed of hire is probably the most dynamic variable that's changed in the job market since the COVID-19 pandemic. What we don't have on this chart are the variable numbers for prior to 2021, but as you can imagine, they were a lot slower than what you see here in 2021, which is really the peak of the speed of the market post-pandemic. The greatest frenzy was really into 2021. As we went into 2022, things have slowed down a little bit, but if we really look at what's changed since the last time we all spoke on the second half of 2022, it's really the mid-market law firm hiring for ediscovery. And you're asking yourself, well, Jared, so vendors are still hiring PMs, analysts, analytics, forensics professionals at a tick of about 25 to 35 days, and that hasn't changed. The main reason for this is because those jobs are still fully 100% remote. That means A, hiring managers have the biggest pool of talent available to them all over the country, if not all over the world, and B, it means they've got the biggest pool of talent available to them because that's what the job seekers want. And we're going to see that in some of our future data that I'll show you in a second. Why are law firms dragging it out another 30 days slower than what they were doing in the fourth quarter of last year? It's because they're trying to bring people back into an office and they're holding pretty tight on a 3-day-a-week in-office commitment. The difference between asking people to come in 3 days a week versus 2 days a week increases your talent pool if you're a hiring manager in ediscovery by almost 50 to 60%. As soon as you drop down to 2 days, people are much more willing to consider that. And keep in mind, if you are searching for candidates who are currently 100% virtual and remote and asking them to come in 2 to 3 days a week, that is a complete recalibration of the routine and rituals that they and their families are in when it comes to daycare and childcare and pickup or even personal commitments with extracurricular activities, which to those individuals are just as important as children. So keep that in mind. You're asking them to do a lot, which means those candidates are still asking for a lot when they make job moves because they consider that to be a huge concession from their lifestyle and their quality of life.
Jared,
yes.
Question for you while we're talking about that. There's been a lot of talk lately about the European market going to 4-day work weeks, right? What's your thought on that? Do you even see that as a flexibility? I think some US companies are thinking about it. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the culture in Europe is drastically different than in America. I think in Europe, generally, our customers and our job seekers like a harder line drawn between what is work and what is not work.
Right.
Certainly, their data protection laws imply that. And I think that that ripples throughout the entire European culture in mainland Europe, and that certainly includes the UK. As far as 4 days a week, you know, I don't see anyone trending to that in our industry as a, hey, this is the way we're going to attract and retain talent and compete in e-discovery with the best talent, because we offer a 4-day-a-week schedule, whereas everybody else in the industry is at 5. There might be a few individuals that are trying that, but that is certainly not something that I see trending in the UK, Botswana, or anywhere else, to be completely frank.
Awesome.
Cool. So law firms are going to hold steady here. And if you want to work at a law firm and you're willing to go in 3 days a week or more, you have a real opportunity to continue to make the kind of increases in compensation that people have been making for the last 2 years, because that hasn't changed. As just a sidebar, executive search is extending, but we think that has more to do with holiday preparation and the switch over from annualized fiscal years than it really does what we should expect when there's more executive staffing to be done in the second quarter. We think it'll go back to about a 4 to 8 week cycle. Cool, here we go, law firm salaries. This hasn't really changed, so there's not a whole lot of updates here, but that's good news, because you would think with the culture that we see in the bigger community that we'd see law firms wanting to pay less. And they're happy to pay what the new market standard is. Money has not been the challenge in filling these jobs. Filling them in the specific geographies within office requirements has been the challenge. So again, if you're somebody that's willing to go into an office, particularly in a big city like San Francisco, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, New York City, Chicago, DC, get in touch, because there's a lot of opportunity, and we are seeing people make 40, 50% increases in salary, going from a 120 base to 165, 170 in base, moving from a vendor to a law firm willing to go into an office. Service providers, not a ton has changed, but I just want to highlight this because we've seen a lot of entry-level placement in the last 6 weeks or so. And we've kind of moved this from what was a range, which everything else is at, to the number 65. And you're going to say, really? And I'm going to say, yeah, really. Like, we placed 6 people in the last 6 weeks at 65,000. And that seems to be like the number people are willing to take and the number people are willing to pay to get somebody that doesn't really have experience in this industry, right? Maybe they're coming from IT legal, maybe they're coming from a paralegal, but this is also a reckoning for paralegals, because a lot of them are making 90, 95, and they don't really know how to use technology. They know ethereally what to do with it, and maybe at a high level consultatively, but not high enough to be in the weeds and be an e-discovery project manager. They kind of got to take a step back, take 2 steps forward. Most of them are not willing to do that. So we are not seeing paralegals filling this void. We're seeing people that are in IT. We're seeing people that are in forensics moving into e-discovery. We see people that are bachelor's degrees in technology, computer science, finding their way into this industry. And I think that number is a number that people looking to break in and people looking to hire break in should really start to get comfortable with. That's what the market seems to want to bear.
What's that skill set behind a technician pro?
Yeah, it's well, look, and this is a whole other topic that True's going to do some content on later. It's around what I think is the single most important skill set for any job seeker right now in any industry, but certainly in ours, which is the ability to take direction. That's really what hiring managers are looking for. Can I train this person? Will they take direction? Look, with e-discovery, which is a much more mature industry than even cybersecurity or data privacy, it is, right? People may not think so. You're like, oh, well, as long as data's been around, so is security. You're like, yeah, but e-discovery as a community and as a discipline has codified itself faster. And as a result, it's very clear what people want from these entry-level people. It's not like they're experimenting on how do we figure out a way or a profile to groom someone and teach them how to be a project manager in the next 2 to 3 years. They have a process, they have a grooming opportunity, right? Like Concilio has an internship program that they're grooming people into their business, right? We're starting to see the actual formalization of farming systems for the first time in like a decade. I mean, remember a year ago, we were having this conversation on there's no farming systems in e-discovery. Well, because the job market tanked in the 4th quarter of last year, and because inflation was so high in salaries, it really started to force more than a handful of e-discovery vendors in particular, not so much law firms, as you can see from the last slide. They're willing to pay top dollar for people with experience, but it forced vendors to say, how do I groom a next generation? And we're actually seeing people do it. Also a little preamble and dangle, in addition to ACEDS being part of our scholarship program, which is going to launch in a couple of weeks, we're going to be offering a vendor for the first time ever that is offering a minimum of 4, but it could go on indefinitely, internship for someone to come in and get on the job paid training as part of our scholarship program. We're really excited about that. We hope that draws a lot more interest, as well as all the great scholarships that we have, including ACEDS, which gives a very generous scholarship to us every year. But this is the target for it, right? This is the target for people like that.
And I will say, so Consiglio's internship program, ACEDS is actually a part of that, and we're part of a few other farming systems too, including one with Relativity, and one with the UF Law eDiscovery School, who also works heavily with some of the vendors in our industry to do internships. So extremely good for anybody who's trying to get into an entry-level role, I would say.
And to answer your question deliberately, and it's not blowing smoke, you say to yourself, well, what does somebody have to do to qualify to get that kind of job? Well, the first thing you need to do is self-invest. And the people who've got their EDEX or have got their ACEDS certification and have never had a chance to apply it are definitely getting preferential treatment when put up against 6 other people that may have superior technical skills but haven't shown the attitude and aptitude that this industry is what they want to be a part of. And look, that's not blowing smoke to ACEDS, because I'll tell you the same thing about the IAPP or OneTrust certification or Relativity certification, right? These are things you can go and pursue without actually having the opportunity to use them. And that signals to an employer that this is somebody worthy of making more investment, and they've already invested in themselves.
Yeah. And I will say, a lot of our large corporation customers who come to ACEDS it is mandatory their first month to go through the eDiscovery Executive Certificate Program with ACEDS. So that is part of their onboarding process in their either first month or their 30, 60, 90-day plan. So that is something that we're seeing more and more often.
I'll share with you that we're seeing a change here on the sales level too. And this downgraded from what was an average of around $250 for a base compensation for a sales rep selling more than $4 million a year in revenue. We've seen that drop down to 200. There is not a huge appetite for people who are selling less than $1 million in eDiscovery right now. The threshold of being a competitive rep where you can really take your book of business to market is probably around 2. But it increases exponentially your earning potential if you've had success hitting the $2, $3, $4, $5 million milestones. And we are seeing people offer less equity opportunities and more, hey, show me what you got kind of attitudes from the hiring managers. I don't think you're going to see as generous of packages in 2023 for sales reps changing jobs as you did in 2021 and 2022. Having said that, if you're someone that is really on the exceptional track, you're doing a lot more than $5 million a year, that never changes. Somebody's going to give you a fantastic offer to make a move if you're ready to make a move.
So a couple of questions and comments that we have in the chat. So I just want to touch on those. So then from our awesome friend Sheila, are the entry-level tech pro positions remote? And I'm going to go back to your other slide that says more and more positions are hybrid or remote.
Yes, the short answer is yes. Do I think that that will change? It depends on the individual company cultures of the people doing this. But yeah, I mean, I think if a company has the opportunity for an entry-level person to come into an office, I think a lot of people still want them to come into an office. And I'll be really honest, I think a lot of the candidates want to come into an office if they're at that level and they're that green. So I don't know that that exclusively applies. But there, I mean, the 6 people we placed, I'd probably say 4 of the 6 are 100% remote. Yeah.
Okay. And then we do have someone who said they're low paid. So my comment to that would be, you should talk to True. And
they are low paid, that 65 is too low.
I don't know which position, but they just said they're low paid. So I think we need to correct that. And then,
by the way, just my opinion is they're not. I think that what the market is telling us is right. And you have to keep in mind that most of these companies aren't hiring, you know, like I don't have 6 customers that hired 6 people. I have 2 customers that hired 6 people, and they're doing it because they don't expect all 3 to make it to the 3-year cycle and be the same caliber PM that the others are, right? They're going to mature potentially at different paces. And so that's part of the strategy as well, is you hire in volume when you're hiring from the bottom up, because you're testing the mettle of what the maturity speed will be of these new hires and how quickly they'll be able to bill more and do more sophisticated things, and then therefore bill more sophisticated rates.
Yeah. And I think so. So people are hiring for X factor, which we've talked about in the past. Sometimes it's easier to train, right? And then, but you need to have somebody who fits the organization. So I think,
yeah, I don't think people have given up on fit, you know, but I think that law firms are a little less concerned about fit than maybe vendors are, because they're hiring for your skill and your experience. That's what they're hiring for, much more than culture.
and then I will say that your stats that you're sharing are an average of what you're placing, not just in one place, but overall. So it's more of an average.
These are based on hundreds and hundreds of placements over I don't think we've done more than 1,000 in a single year, but we come close.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these are based on hundreds and hundreds of, and keep in mind, a lot of this data is also not just the placements that we've made. It's, you know, people are taking jobs and telling us all this information, you know, in addition to us actually doing the transaction. So we are privy to, you know, I think we're privy to about 1/2 to 3/4 of the movement in the marketplace.
Yeah, because there was a comment about Arizona not paying that high. So we can talk more maybe on the next.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, there are still the geographic differentials, right? Like I still argue with internal HR people all the time about the data report they got from some aggregated data of what people with 2 years experience in professional services in Phoenix make may not be apples to apples to ediscovery, right? Ediscovery might require a little more, or people in ediscovery might pay a little less because they think that they can, because they see this report, right? It goes both ways. What I'm telling you is the customers that I'm working with have been settling on 65 as what they think is fair. And they are both some hybrid, some fully remote, but they're all over the country. I mean, it's not like all of those are centralized in one location and are inflated or underinflated for that reason.
I would add too that, you know, a lot of these firms, and this is my experience for all of my career, a lot of firms rely on these sort of outdated,
Correct.
you know, salary surveys or whatever that aren't necessarily focused on ediscovery. They look to like adjacent areas like IT or some other process-oriented sort of job category to arrive at suitable salaries.
Correct.
Those models, particularly in an industry, ediscovery, that is incredibly accelerated over several years, that's just a really bad model. So I can understand why someone in a particular geographic location is not seeing salary that aligns with what we're reporting here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving, because I know we have a lot more to talk about.
We've got a few minutes, and I still want 2 topics I want to touch on.
Yeah, and just to touch on this point too, because I'm going to talk about the pendulum swing here when it comes to contract staffing, and the pendulum swing when it comes to what we're seeing in terms of remote. The other thing that a lot of those reports don't account for is that things change a lot faster now after the pandemic, right? It used to be you could run a report from 2015 to 2018 and kind of have aggregate data that would indicate how you should behave or what you should pay for 2019. And I'm going to show you a slide in a second that shows exactly that. But since 2020 to now, things go like this every 18 months now. I mean, the stock market, go look at the stock market. The stock market did this all the way up until 2020. Then it did this, then it did this, then it did this. Now it's down here. It's going to go like this. It's swinging so fast. Well, so is the job market when it comes to 3 things. And those things are remote, hybrid, relocation, and contract. So what you'll see here is a focus really on the remote hybrid. 89% are either fully remote or hybrid in ediscovery, and 66% of those in all of last year were 100% remote. So that is indicative of, I think, all the other data that we presented. You're going to see here when it comes to relocation that we actually predict relocation will go up, because we're seeing law firms starting to be open-minded to people relocating to cities like New York, San Francisco in order to get them into an office. So we actually think it's going to go from the lowest it's ever been last year at 1% back up to about 5%. When it comes to contracting, this is probably the most important swing in terms of pendulums. As you could see in 2019, it was at 33%. Pandemic hits, the market swings almost fully to contract, 56%. Bottoms out again in 2021, tons of full-time hiring in the first 3 quarters of last year. The contract business for our business and for the market, just the volumes of opportunities and the modality has been contract to hire at 39%. That 39% is not indicative of a whole year. That 5% jump is indicative of a radical shift in the fourth quarter, right? If I take out the fourth quarter of last year, that number goes down. It goes below 34%. It's probably in the like high 20s. When I add in the fourth quarter, it rockets up to 39. We think by the end of this year, contracting is going to be close to 60% of the e-discovery marketplace. Because look, the law firms are eventually going to have to either bend on their in-office requirements, or the candidates are going to have to bend on their in-office requirements. I don't see either of those things happening. So we're at stalemate, which is why the timeline for hiring is extended an extra 30 days for law firms. And so what they're going to have to do is either relocate people or start hiring contractors and making concessions for contractors because they have things they need to get done and they need to get the work done while they continue to look for a perfect fit who will come into the office. That's what we see happen.
I mean, and all everything you hear is talking about gig economy is just going to continue, right? Contract.
Well, in America, it's at 35%, which is more than 1 out of every 3 people. In e-discovery last year, it was 39%. In theory, right? That's the percentage of job orders we filled compared to full-time jobs where people were in contract or contract to hire positions. It's almost 40% of the marketplace. And if you go back and look historically, and I'll show you guys this is data that goes all the way back. There's your pendulum. You see what a slow trend it was, right? And I'm guessing on some of these numbers back in 08, 09, because that was before I opened True. But I remember what I was working on back then, and it was a lot of contract. I mean, that was, you know, for those of you who were with me, and there were literally hundreds of you, General Motors and everything happening in Detroit and Porsche ignition switch and, you know, Purdue Pharma. And like, these were some huge litigations that were using contractors for years, a BP oil spill, right? That was all happening then, hundreds of e-discovery contractors, right? Well, we've all gotten a little bit better at it. We started hiring more people in full-time capacity because the economy was so strong leading into 2019. And now it's been topsy-turvy. And we think by 2024, it's going to go back down to 40% because the market's going to stabilize. But you could see the erraticness of how things change in our industry. And the reason why I do these every month is because I'm hoping we gain a following where people really start to subscribe to this reality. It is not just conjecture. This is how the market is behaving. And what employers can do to compete more effectively is consider contractors for short-term contracts because that talent pool is out there and available. And it's not just out-of-work people. It's people who are hitting the ceiling of their e-discovery careers and saying, I don't want to be a full-time employee. I'd rather go and work 8 months out of the year, make more than I make in a full-time role. Maybe I don't need, you know, all the security and stability that comes with a full-time employment because the market is so rich with opportunity. And hey, as an employer, the market is so rich with talent.
Yeah. Question is contract positions you are seeing remote or in office or hybrid?
Yeah, it's a mix, but you know, the stats that we showed you before where, you know, 89% and 66%, those are a conglomerate of contract and full-time jobs. So that's your answer. I mean, they're primarily remote.
Yeah.
Just as with a full-time job, if you're willing to go into an office, you now become a little bit more competitive. There's going to be even more opportunity for you to explore.
And are they with vendors mostly or a mix?
The contract roles are a mix, but I would say they probably, just like all jobs in the market, swing about, you know, 3/4 vendor, 1/4 law firm. You know, 65% of the jobs in the industry are generally at vendors. 25% are at law firms and the rest are at corporations.
Okay. Perfect. All right.
Cool.
Anything else we want to cover?
Well, I know you have some specific topics you want to get into, and we've got 5 minutes. So if there are no more questions, let's do it.
So and it kind of leads to one of the questions in the chat. Let's talk about Mike's favorite topic. He's been on a soapbox about this for a few months. So let's talk about recession. So what are we seeing as far as recession? We've seen a couple of companies announce more layoffs, right? There was a couple at the beginning of this year, a couple at the end of last year. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know Mike has his thoughts and feelings about the recession. So I don't know if Mike wants to go first about what he's seen, what he thinks, or if you want to go first, Jared.
I do want to kind of set the table because I have this working sort of operational theory that I've been thinking about, and that is that law firms are their own worst enemy, right? And they got drunk for a while, and now they're heading into a hangover, so to speak. You know, they raised associate salaries not once, twice. And they hired, and now every one of the statements you see, and it's not every firm, but the public announcements, and you can probably say if there's 5 public announcements, there's probably 10 or 15 other firms that are also doing it, and you're not hearing about it. But in any event, my theory is that they just overprojected. They thought there would be more work, and the work is not there, and so now they're forced to look at their bottom line, particularly coming into a new year, and they're saying, okay, are we going to make it through the year, right? Because law firms, businesses or not, however you perceive them, they're very conscious of their bottom line. Those partners are not going to go without money. It's just not going to happen. And so if they look at their year and they're projecting out their revenue budget for the year, and they're saying, okay, okay, we need to lay off, right? And it may be just temporary, and goodness, I hate when the staff gets laid off. It just bothers me, but I think they overprojected, they got drunk, and now they're hungover. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit slower, but this notion of a recession, the economic indicators are just not there. I don't care what the politicians say or what the fear mongers say or the pundits. It's just not there. It's a strong economy, and we're going to be just fine. But I don't know, Jared, juxtapose that with the numbers you're seeing in the market, and should people be afraid for their jobs if they work at a law firm right now?
Well, the short answer to the first question is definitely not. The law firms are in e-discovery desperate for talent. So I don't really think that would be my concern, unless you're an underperformer or somebody that's got conflict with people in the business, and then yeah, maybe you become vulnerable for those reasons. But I don't think that large volumes of people are generally vulnerable because law firms need to create marginal increases in profit. Having said that, I think corporations are behaving exactly the opposite. And I think that e-discovery to corporation is probably the least secure job in e-discovery, and that they value it the least and probably could see it as something that could get outsourced. And those are more likely the people to get the first wave of layoffs in our community, that vertical, because they're not billable, they're not revenue generating, and everywhere else they are. So there's some risk to going to corporate for that reason. And now there might be a reckoning. I don't know. But look, again, only about 5% of the community in e-discovery is employed at a corporation. The rest are at vendors and law firms. So again, it's not going to feel the way that maybe it does in big tech, because such a broader volume of people are now becoming victims of reduction in force that are not based on their personal performance, but the performance of the company, particularly publicly traded ones that are not showing profit for multiple quarters in a row. And yeah, there's a reckoning coming. I mean, I'll be very honest with you, more of my privacy and cyber community has been affected from rifts than my e-discovery community. So this notion that e-discovery hiring managers are going to somehow wait out the candidate community in this space and get a bunch of out of work people who are really talented that are going to take lower rates or come into an office that they otherwise wouldn't have is absolutely a myth, law firm, vendor, or otherwise. And that's not to scare corporate people, because it's not like I see corporate people getting laid off, but I know we only have a minute, so I want to get this idea out there to everybody. We are not in a recession. Mike is right. We are not in a recession. If we go into a recession, things are going to look a lot worse, and I'm going to be saying very different things than I'm saying right now, because people are going to start to get fired. I just don't see that happening. What I see is actually a rebound, probably, of the volume and speed that we saw in the third and second quarter of last year happening in the second and third quarter of this year, because people are preparing for a recession. That's really what all these layoffs are. That's really what all of this is just some preparation and an excuse to maybe make some hard decisions about keeping or not keeping staff for reasons that are not really associated to recession. Now, I'll also offer this. People are making changes to their infrastructure from a human capital perspective to also prepare for growth. And if you're a growth-driven company, not a maintenance-driven company, right? You're not Coca-Cola, you're a vendor that's trying to go from 20 to 30 million in 12 months. You're going to also make some strategic changes to your hiring models, both in terms of acquiring and discharging talent, because you are now focused on a different strategy for growth than just dealing with a barrage of inbound, downstream, low-hanging fruit that was a result of built up from the pandemic. And we're past that now, right? We're in a new normal. Things have stabilized. It's not about the pandemic. People are not making life choices based on the safety of being outside anymore. And so it's really about what strategic decisions are companies going to make and where do you as an employee fit in them. Perfect.
So we're not going to get to my automation and AI conversation, which I do want to touch on because, and so we're going to pin that for the next one. So if you're interested, automation and AI and what that means for our industry and for professional development, make sure to join us the next time. I do want to say we will have our Eye on ESI next month, but in addition to our Eye on ESI, Jared, Mike, myself, and a slew, I think we've got over 50 speakers going to the UF Law eDiscovery Conference in Gainesville, Florida. It is also virtual. Last year, there were over 3,000 people in attendance virtually for the conference. It has over 14 judges participating in the 2-day conference. Everything is recorded. It is available for 3 months, 6 months actually, after the conference, and it has up to 12 CLE credits. So share that, join it. It is an extremely great event. It is very different from other conferences. Jared has a 10-minute session where he will fire away, and I'm sure he's going to have some great tidbits. Mike has a great session with Scott Milner of Morgan Lewis, Stephanie Clerkin of Quarantillery, and Leah Bays. Rebecca Bailey. Rebecca Bailey of, and I forget where Rebecca is from. But please be sure to join us there in addition to Eye on ESI. Jared has True Trends that he puts out every month talking about metrics and in the industry as well. So please make sure to read that if you want to catch up in between these calls. And I'd say for anyone, if you're not a member of ACEDS, if you want to get certified or get a certificate, Jared pointed to a lot of those entry-level roles. I'll put a lot of that information in the chat so you can go to those or just go to our website. And last words, Jared?
Now's a great time to be looking for a job. People are eager. People want to move fast. eDiscovery is a great community and a great industry, and I really am proud to be a part of it and really glad to kick off the new year with all of you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mike, I know you're a little out of it, but I know you've got some wise words there.
Just ditto.
Okay. All right, ditto.
He's always stealing my thunder. What am I gonna do?
I'll go first with you next time. Thank you all. Again, join us next month for Eye on ESI or UF Law eDiscovery Conference or both. And let us know if you've got questions, email Jared, email myself, or email Mike, and we'll be sure to answer those on our next call or over email. Bye, everyone.